Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 16th meeting of the Stillwater Planning Commission. Item 2, land use for item in discussion and possible action, Stillwater Medical Center map amendment, rezoning PZ-17-2189, requesting review and approval of a map amendment to rezone all properties located in the 700 between Stanley and Gray from O office and RSS residential single family small lot to P public. We do have a memo from staff stating a property notice for the map amendment for the Stillwater Medical Center to rezone a block of property at the 700 block of Gray and Stanley between 7th and 8th Avenue was provided for the June 5th City Council meeting. However, the public notice letters that were sent to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property included inaccurate public hearing dates. Therefore, we are requesting that that item be postponed until the June 19th City Council meeting. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which would be the City of Stillwater Land Development Code Amendment PZ-16-2143, requesting review and approval of a text amendment to the Land Development Code, Chapter 23, Section 23-97, General Structures and Uses Within Residential Districts, Section 23-98, General Structures and Uses Within All Other Districts, and Section 23-121, Exemptions, Setbacks for Fences, etc., projections into yards. Mr. Coots.
Before I get too far into that, on the last item, it's postponed to the June 6th Planning Commission meeting, just in case anybody's following and is intending to come to that. All right. So I have a text amendment, deals with a couple of different subjects, and before I get too far into it, I wanted to just make it clear that there are specific sections that we worked on. There are specific sections that we've kept for now, and we'll be bringing back to talk about in more detail again later when we bring back the big land development code update we've been talking about. But these particular issues are issues that have come up recently, and we wanted to get them through and out of the way so that these issues won't be hung up for other projects. So, some key points. Basically, the text amendment. You've got the copy of the text. Key points. A lot of it has to do with accessory buildings and structures and where they are located on the properties. Some of the setbacks and the types, depending on the type of accessory building. And then a lot of stuff having to do with projections and encroachments for buildings, when it is okay for a building to go past the setback or above the height limit in a district. And then the fence height and locations to clarify and allow fences in situations where we are okay with allowing fences that are taller and still keeping them from being so tall in situations where we don't want them to be so tall. These key points should allow for the need for fewer variances, because the problem with how many of you on the Planning Commission have served on the Board of Adjustment at some point? All but one. Oh, all five. Okay, all of you. So you may remember from some of the projects that you reviewed as on the Board of Adjustment, the bar for obtaining a variance can be pretty high. It should be more than we want to do it just because we want to do it, or just because it'd be good for us or nice for us and it's not hurting anybody, that sort of thing. It should be a little bit higher than that. And but there are cases that you wish you could approve, and so that's kind of what this is about: is taking some issues that probably ought to be okay and clarifying that they are okay as going forward, so that they don't have to try to cross that bar for a variance. So, if you have any questions, I'll go through the findings. Basically, I didn't adjust that slide. Health report, though. Just a moment. Findings were that the text amendment shouldn't cause a safety concern in the community, will still encourage appropriate development opportunities. and it should reduce the number of variance applications that are received by permitting practices that have generally been approved by variances or are within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. So do we have any questions about some of the specific provisions in here?
I've kind of got a little list, if it's time to go through that. I noticed on, I guess it would be item 2. Let's see. I guess it would be, in specific accessory uses and structures. It's subsection C. And item 2H.
Yeah, Stephen Ghost just pointed out there's a typo in that. That was existing, and it's existing in our current code. And that kind of comes to, there are other things in these sections that you're looking at. Some stuff has been rearranged and reorganized and simplified, but the discussion for the text amendment and the changes specifically have to do with the accessory buildings, projections, and fences. This typo in the home occupation regs, we will be bringing that back with the big land development code update and a lot of other different things in this area that we're looking at.
So I was out of time there, I guess. Well, I have another one on down in 4 under residential accessory uses in any residential district.
That was reworded, so what did you see there?
4C, it says private swimming pools and bathhouses provided that such pools private swimming pools and bathhouses provided that the pool is enclosed by a minimum 4-foot fence having no opening greater than 6 inches. And I think code-wise, you can't have an opening greater than 4 inches or less than 10.
There's that 4-inch sphere thing.
Yes. So I thought that may be something we might want to address in that.
Yes, and then like I said, that is the existing text in here. I'll make a note that we definitely need to make sure that meets the building code, because I think you're right on that 4-inch
Pretty sure that does it.
opening. Okay.
And then the only other, and this is just kind of an observation in general on all of these accessory structures, fences. I know sometimes there are restrictive covenants in certain subdivisions that, even though it's allowed by city code, aren't allowed by certain restrictive covenants. I don't know if there's any way we could put just a general note, mainly to help people that might come in and look at the code and think, okay, I'm okay to do this, even though they might live in a neighborhood where there's restrictive covenants that they're not aware of. I've seen this happen several times in some of the subdivisions I'm part of, and it's typically not the first homeowner, it's somebody second, third homeowner down the road that wasn't aware there were even restrictive covenants. And so I didn't know if it would be prudent to maybe just have a general note that, in some cases, the subdivision you live in may have restrictive covenants.
I'll make a note of that. It'd be something we'll need to talk
Maybe
about.
y'all can discuss it and see. I just think it might be a little more user-friendly for the general public.
The issue is restrictive covenants. They can cover all kinds of different issues. So it's like it'll either need to be a blurb in the beginning of the code somewhere. Hey, by the way, there might be restrictive covenants. We couldn't put it next to everything that restrictive covenants might cover,
Sure.
like say the fence area. By the way, your restrictive covenants might prohibit wood fences.
It's been my experience, though. It's always accessory structures and fences that are the problem children.
Yeah,
So anyway, just food for thought.
sure.
So that's all I have, Tom.
Okay. Anyone else?
Any other questions for Tom? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak in favor of this, please step forward.
Stephen Ghost with Ghost & Associates, 113 East 8th. Just a couple of questions, and we can go through this with staff later too. In section 23-121, the fence heights were changed from 8 feet in the old code to 7 feet in the new code. I know the building code says if it's over 7 feet, it has to be engineered, but was the intent to restrict the fence height in residential? I know it allows for higher in industrial and commercial, but not the residential. So just some clarification of why it went from 8 to 7. And then under section 2A, item 3, it says, for any fence which is more than 60% opaque, you got to have landscaping. Landscaping must be provided, but I don't see a definition of, is that a small shrub, a big tree, something in between, or a combination of all of them? So those are just the two questions that I had.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor?
Roger Ghost, 113 East 8th. I think they got a good start on getting this thing revised. On number 5, it talks about private energy systems with the following conditions: wind energy and some things like that. The tower could be placed 3 feet from the rear lot line. I think that could be pretty imposing on the neighbor to the back. I don't know if there should be some consideration given to, a windmill sitting in your backyard. It's now closer. I mean, it's in your backyard, but not very close to their house. I don't know how to address that, but that's something that ought to be considered. Y'all already caught the swimming pool deal, and you might just refer to whatever the state, either the state health department code is or what the building code requires, because that seems to be a moving target on swimming pools. And 9A.
Roger, your first comment, where was it at? I wanted to make sure.
5. Let me see. You got 3 is childcare, 4 is residential accessory uses. That's where the swimming pool was. Then right after that, it's private energy systems. With the following conditions: wind energy generators must be designed and installed. But if you go back to and maybe that's where I should have referred to, is the table under 23.97. This table, Dusty.
Okay, I got you.
It says private energy systems, side yard setbacks 5 feet, rear yard setbacks 3 feet.
Okay, that's it.
Something to be considered. It requires landscaping, and that's not what I want to talk about. 9A. Excuse me, sorry.
What's your recommendation on that, Roger?
I don't know. Hadn't thought about it much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucker's hanging up there. It falls, it's going to be in your yard too, just about like a tree. On 9A, accessory buildings, such structures such as shipping containers or trailers or similar structures which are used in a manner similar to storage buildings. Does that include box trailers that are parked next to the property line at 6th and Lewis that contain tires? I mean, that's definitely all that's going on. Those have become accessory structures right at the property line. So if that's not included in there, I'd like to see it not particularly theirs, but that kind of use. The other thing, and this may not be the place to put it, but landscaping's required through different spots in the ordinance. At some point, we need to get a requirement that landscaping live or be replaced. We've got a lot of it around town. Developers spend a lot of money putting trees in, sometimes the wrong kind of tree. I don't think the city ought to tell them what kind of tree to plant, just make sure it lives. And if it doesn't live, you get to replace it. You've got one shopping center here in town, which I think half of their trees are, oh gosh, 5 or 6 years old, and the other half are dead. and then you have a brand new one that all the landscaping on one side's dead. So if they're going to invest the money, and we're going to try to make the town look better, I think that stuff ought to live. Anything else? Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor? Seeing none, we'll ask anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for staff's alternatives.
Hello, Tom Coots again.
If you'd like to answer any of those before you move on to alternatives, Tom,
Okay.
feel free to do that.
Very good. The first thing I came to that I made a note on was the question about whether in section 97, 9A, the accessory buildings are generally subject to the following exceptions. And the thing about the structures such as shipping containers or trailers or similar structures which are used in a manner similar to a storage building will be treated basically as an accessory building. And yes, the intent was that if you're using these types of shipping containers, they're never moving or something in that manner, it's basically being used like a building, that this would be something that would be used to require that they at least meet setbacks, if not possibly the building code if it would apply, if it makes sense to apply it.
Do we do that with a time frame? I mean, if somebody has, let's say, a pod taken to their house to, start to move,
Right.
takes them a couple of weeks to get it packed up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an accessory structure, obviously,
Yeah.
but how do we regulate that? I don't know if putting a time frame on it is the way to go about it, or,
Usually we would go by about 6 months, or usually it'd be something like if we had a complaint about something, we'd contact them and, hey, what's going on? Is this ever going to move? And but a time frame might not be a bad idea, so that if once we made contact and realize that it's there, and say, all right, you've got now X amount of time to get taken care of. But usually it comes down to once we come down and say, hey, it looks like this hasn't moved. Are you going to move it? And it's, yes, we're planning on moving it here at this point, or no, man, that's where I store my stuff. Then that sort of, based on how our conversation goes, would be kind of how we'd react to that, I would think. But a time frame.
should there be a permit required?
If depends on the size of a building, we issue
Not a building
no chart.
permit, but like a temporary storage or something. I don't know if we have anything
I
like
think,
that in place.
Man alive, you're going a little too far in terms of
Well, I don't
permits.
know. I'm throwing it out there.
No. If I got a small storage building in my backyard, I don't want to have to go permits. I think we're going beyond what government ought to go beyond.
I should point out that
And I work for government.
any structure that's over 200 square feet does require a building permit for sure. Something that's less than that, it still is subject to setback requirements,
Yes.
with some exceptions that we're seeing in this text here. And they should can pull a no-charge permit, and we will review that to make sure that they still meet the setbacks. Anybody else have any input on whether or not there should be a specific time?
Well, I think 6 months is more than ample if it's a temporary situation. Obviously, you're not going to know exactly when it was moved in there. So I guess it would have to be 6 months from the time that you notice it, for lack of a better way to say it.
We'll say 6 months. Go from there. Okay?
So where would that be added in? Are we talking about adding that tonight?
Well, I guess it depends on what you move forward with. If you all are okay with the 6 months, but yes.
I
to
think
that
6
point,
months
know what you're
is
looking
too long myself.
Oh,
If I've got something there that someone's moved in and they're using it as storage and it is ugly and it doesn't have the setback, I think 6 months is too long. I think 30 days is sufficient.
I will say this, we do see these things in conjunction with a lot of construction projects. For example, just down the street from where I live, the hospital project, they use these containers. They've been there for months and months, but I know that they're not going to be there
They're
forever.
permitted.
Huh? Not the shipping containers that they're using for storage for the
Don't
project, but they do as a project.
Don't they, as part of their construction permit, state they're going to have that in there?
No.
Okay. So if we make it 6 months, it still has the problem with them.
Well,
You could, I guess, reapply or I don't know. What's the answer to that, Tom? What's the easy?
well, we can put something in there about a construction project or something like that. But I just meant like 30 days may be a little bit too short, depending on what the use is for. But right now, the code is completely silent on these things, and so we're trying to start by putting something out there. So it's,
I kind of think 30 days is a little short too, but maybe 6 months is too long. Maybe we ought to say 90 days. Is that
9 days is
More-
okay with me.
more palatable to everybody? Okay. I agree there should be something in there, though. Yeah.
okay, and then the next issue was brought up was the question in section 121, subsection B2. Fences between 4 and 7 feet. And then number 3 after that. Basically, when you have a fence along one of our major streets, currently the code says that that's a front yard. So even if it's your backyard, it's a front yard, and you can't have a 4-foot fence, or you can only have a 4-foot fence to divide yourself between you and the major road. But as you know, you drive around town, everyone has a 6-foot fence. So what this says basically is you can do that, but if we are going to be doing that have a tall fence along our major roads, maybe there should be some thought about what the major roads will look like. Because if it's just fences, a wood fence, it's just a tunnel effect. You have your road in the middle and 2 fences on either side, and it's just a big long tunnel, basically. And so thought about something about some landscaping to sort of soften that. But it's true, it isn't very specific on the landscaping. Didn't know if you had any, what you'd kind of like to see regarding that landscaping, if landscaping is necessary.
I think on the 19th project, I remember that I didn't like the sense that they were going to have a big 6-foot blank wall that goes for 3 or 4 blocks. So I think landscaping is something that would do something to break up that, 300 feet of wood fence or masonry fence or whatever it is. But how to specify what landscaping is landscaping, I just don't have any good advice.
I don't either, and typically, the landscaping, obviously, you want on the roadside. Most of the time, those walls, fences, whatever, are built near property line. So, would this landscaping end up out in the easement?
Yeah, and what this is.
Would it live? Would it be maintained? I mean, those are all questions that come to my mind if we require it.
Yeah, and what this says, currently people put their fence right on the property line, so this says they got to at least have 2 feet to plant whatever landscaping.
That landscaping will be on the street side. We have a difficult time with the city budget funding requirements for street maintenance and other activities. I don't see this landscaping living. And therefore, I'm not in favor of any landscape requirement.
I agree with Mike on that one. I mean, we have areas where, the right-of-way, the homeowner's supposed to mow their right-of-way. It's not getting done. So I know landscaping is probably not going to be maintained as well as it should be. So again, I'm with you on that, Mike. I don't think we should require it.
And then the question was brought up about 7-foot versus 8-foot fences. The code previously went up to 8 feet, but anything over a certain amount still required a building permit, and then anything over 8 feet still will require engineering or what have you. But the 2015 building code sets the limit at 7 feet for fences before engineering and whatnot's required, and so we thought this would be a good time to sort of bring our zoning code in line with the building code in that regard. And I believe that was...
Goes, does that answer your question?
Yes.
I believe that was all the questions.
If it's an 8-foot fence, it's going to have to be permitted and engineered.
If it's an 8-foot fence, it'll be permitted and engineered. I'm repeating you because you're not on the microphone.
But that's not allowed in residential. The way this is written.
The way it is written is not allowed in residential. That's a correct statement. Do you have a comment to that, or?
I don't care.
Okay. I did not repeat that statement.
Did any of you have any questions that popped in your head? All right. So we have some alternatives. We can recommend approval of the text amendment as presented. We can recommend approval of the text amendment with the identified changes, or we can decide that the text amendment is not needed and recommend that the city council not approve the text amendment, or we can continue this discussion to hopefully the next planning commission meeting to continue the discussion.
Any discussion amongst the commissioners?
I mean, I personally don't mind moving it along with the items that we discussed.
90 rule, no landscape, and
Do you want me to make a stab, or do you want to make a stab?
Just do the motion as discussed, and she can go through the minutes, and I'll second it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve, I better get my language right. Find that the proposed text amendment is needed, and recommend that the city council approve the proposed text amendment with the changes identified this evening.
I'll second that. That does pass 5-0. Next, we have the approval of the regular meetings for the May 2nd, 2017 Planning Commission meeting.
Move to approve.
I'll second that and give you kudos on writing that one. That was a long setup.
And that passes 5-0 as well. With that, the next Planning Commission meeting will happen June 6, 2017. And with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And we're adjourned.